media briefing. We've had a fairly good discussion. We're now passing bills from second to third reading calendar, and obviously Medicaid expansion was one of the bills that we worked on today, so we had a good discussion on it. So with that, I'm going to be open for questions, and Senator Christensen's on his way, but we can maybe fill some questions while we're waiting.
Well, President Adams, if you could speak to leadership's interest in this Medicaid expansion bill. This is very fast track. You don't have a fiscal note. It had a hearing yesterday without a fiscal note. It had a vote without a fiscal note. Is the idea that you'll have one in place before you vote on it? Why the rush on this? Why do this so quickly at the beginning of the session?
One of the reasons we want to try and move it along is that it's my understanding, and maybe Senator Hammer can help also, that we need to have the bill in place in our statute to be able to apply for the waivers. So the timing on the waivers requires that we move somewhat expeditiously. We surely don't want to move faster than what's needed. We'll have a fiscal note, and if we need to, we may hear the bill tomorrow or may hear it Friday. I want to make sure that people have the information, but this bill has been talked about for a while. The issue's been around since November and before, so hopefully we're not moving fast, but we are trying to get it in statute so we can apply for a waiver. I think that's important. So,
we're trying to get it implemented by April 1. And to do that, it needs to be passed. But that said, we are following all of the rules, processes, procedures of the legislative process. It's going to have 2 hearings, one in the Senate, one in the House. It will be on the calendars for the right time. We won't pass it out without a fiscal note, which would violate the rules. So we're going to follow all the rules, and it's moving through the process at the process's pace.
One of the arguments I've heard about the bill is, even if you want to ultimately end up with a program similar to what Senator Christensen has, you know, covering the reduced population, putting some of those caps and other restrictions on it to make it more fiscally responsible, I think that's your term. Why not go ahead and implement the full Medicaid expansion voters already passed in the meantime? Because you don't need waivers, that's ready to go on April 1st. Why not go ahead with that, and then if and when the waivers come through, then you implement it needs a healthy Utah label.
Full expansion at the 90-10 prohibits any caps. We would have to get a waiver for that. And to get a waiver, we couldn't implement that right away, so now we're right back in the same ballgame. It would also take out the whole 100 to 138% bunch, 41,000 people. So we implement at 90-10, we just go for full expansion, and then when we get the waiver, we tell all those people from 100 to 138, now you're off Medicaid, and you have to all go buy insurance plans. That didn't sit really well with me either. So we're going to make do with the bridge plan as far as it will go. Hopefully that's sooner than later. And is it going to happen? I wish I could tell you what anything was going to happen at the federal level right now. I don't know if the doors will be open tomorrow or if anybody's even going to be working out there. But I have confidence from our discussion that these waivers will be granted in a timely manner. Everybody says they haven't ever been. Nobody's ever had the offer on the table that we have now with the per capita caps. And if you understand that one, you're better than I have been right up to this point. But that's not an enrollment cap, that is a spending type cap. And they haven't put it in writing, but I feel very confident, and they have assured us that will happen.
When you say they, are you talking about the administration?
CMS.
But that's not
That's
the
not
White
the
House.
That's not the White House.
Which has killed this in the past.
It has been. They say they say that they are now on board with CMS on the offering, and they're in the process of rolling out new rules that are going to apply for everyone and encourage individual states to try new things, which I think is wonderful, because that's where it ought to be. We're the,
Okay.
Senator Hammer, yeah, go ahead.
So they've failed to grant the 90-10 match up to 100% in the past. But with the bridge plan that we are in the process of passing, that will be implemented. There's no question that. It costs us more as a state to get up to potentially 100% with the 70-30 match. So that costs us more, but there's no question that will get implemented.
Why is there no question that a waiver would be granted for that?
Because it's not the 90, we're not goofing around with the system. We're not trying to get, okay, I already apologize, I said that word. Delete that
Oh,
word.
don't
goof.
apologize.
We're not trying to innovate within the system. Much better word. We're playing within the rules of the system, which are we can go up 70-30, and we can do that. We can expand all we want there under 70-30. And so we're appropriating money, we're gonna take the sales tax, we're gonna appropriate more, and we're gonna move up that 70-30 chain. There's no question if we can do that.
Why can't we get something in writing though from CMS? If you've had these discussions, shouldn't they be?
I don't think the federal government's writing anything down these
No,
days.
but have you thought about what a shutdown
They're
might
recording
do?
it and then deleting it.
Come on in.
If the government shuts down
You
again in
want
another
water?
2 weeks, would that
There you go.
affect what you all are trying to do with Medicaid though?
I can't remember if CMS stayed open or not. There were things that were being inhibited, the White House people that were working. There was some initial hesitance on our part to putting the bridge plan in. Well, heavens, there's Representative Anderegg's bill who doesn't want any of it, just cancel all of it. So then we formed one without a bridge plan. We will wait for the 90-10. And then we finally came back and said, let's put the bridge plan in here. Well, what if we don't get the 90-10? Then the 70-30 stays in effect, which is the more expensive way to go. But I am convinced of it, and I'm worried about dollars around here as anybody is in social services. And I'm willing to bet, I am betting, that we will get the 90-10 match, and it won't be a problem. We said, is that going to be a hindrance if we're 70-30 and then ask for 90-10, which is more? He said, not if you put the per capita caps in with it. I'm taking them at face value, taking them at their word.
So let's maybe compare the initiative to Senator Christensen's first substitute. The initiative asked for implementation April 1. His first substitute anticipates implementation April 1. They're the same.
Up to 100%.
Okay, we'll get there. The initiative asks for, it doesn't ask for, but I've talked to a lot of advocates that would like a hospital tax. The initiative has had a hospital tax on it during this interim period. I assume that's something that the initiative actually does away with the COLAs, which most of the advocates would like to have, because it gives that financial stability.
The bill does away with
Excuse me,
it.
the bill, correct me, the bill does that. So there's a lot of common ground up to that point. The only difference that I can see between the initiative and Senator Christensen's bill is when you go from 100 to 138, his bill asks that, and it's not a 90-10 match, it's not a 70-30 match, but it's something that's kind of unique, it's 100% paid for by the federal government, is that they provide a platinum plan for the people between 100 and 138. And when you add the hospital assessment, plus you add the lack of the COLAs, plus you add 100% payment from 100 to 138 by the federal government, that gives financial stability way out into the future. And so that's what we're trying to find is financial stability. And the three of those combined give us what we're looking for and give coverage from 100 to 138. Does that make sense? And the last portion is paid for by the federal government 100%.
Well, paid for by the federal government and the recipients who have to, it's subsidized heavily, but there's still a payment. And someone at that 100 to 138% of poverty is only making like 12,000 to 17,000 a year.
The payment is capped, help me,
It's
Senator.
2.08%,
And that is about
22.
$22 to $27 a month.
But that's a lot of money to
And
someone
it's
not making very
prorated
much.
as you get closer to 100% as versus 138, the subsidy becomes larger.
And, but that, there's some advantages also besides the financial stability. A commercial plan may have additional flexibility than a Medicaid plan for the recipient. And so there's other, but that's the difference. So we are so close to the initiative that we have expanded, and there's really, that's the only difference I can see.
What's the price difference between going 70-30 for up to 100% for that bridge program versus just implementing the
I'll tell you-
initiative?
Tell you tonight at 5 o'clock, when we get the fiscal notice.
But I mean, roughly, what are we thinking about there? Because you are talking about spending more tax dollars for less, at least initially.
And that's what we're pursuing. It is short-term, potentially, could cost more, but long-term, it puts the program on much sounder footing to where we feel like it is stable and, if I can use this when I talk about taxes, self-sustaining, long-term with the waivers we're looking for.
Okay, maybe, good discussion. Any other comments?
No, I mean, I think going back to the president and Senator, from the beginning of the conversation in November after the Prop 3 passed, you know, there's been changes, and all we're hoping is move forward with Prop 3, with the fiscal changes, because you're right, there were pieces that we can use on savings and the hospital assessment, and we're hoping to allow that to move and then make changes on an incremental step versus, in a way, repealing and replacing Prop 3. So it's not that we completely disagree on some of those pieces. I mean, my substitute had a lot of the pieces that Senator Christensen's bill had. It was just the idea that we can move forward with what the will of the people clearly was stated on Prop 3, bring those savings, and then if needed, start putting some changes, because part of what we do here is change all the time things, and that's expected.
These ladies are practical enough, but there are many people out there who would say Prop 3 as printed exactly, don't even touch it, don't even fix the technicalities. And they would say, well, we have to fix those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people out there who say, no, we passed it, you leave it alone.
So I would say this isn't a glass half empty or half full. I think it's a glass that's almost mostly full with that difference that I just talked about, okay?
It's a different approach to get to the same.
We're expanding.
I just had a concern with the capitation part, because that's something that the federal government, you know, wanted, and it's an enormous savings to them. And if we go over just a little, then we're gonna be left with 100% of the total cost above the limit. And so it's more like a self-inflicted wound that we're doing for ourselves. It's a good deal for the federal government, but it's not a good deal for the states. And
You
that
mean the per capita, that's not capitation.
the per capita,
The per capita caps,
the per capita
She's
caps.
talking about capitation.
no,
The per capita caps.
the cost.
Sorry, I
of the feds
used the
on that.
wrong terminology. And you know, the voters approved this sales tax increase, and I haven't seen how the savings from other existing programs that we have. And, you know, we're gonna take the savings that are done, and that's not something the voters envisioned, of taking and putting it in a restricted account and not being able to have the coverage that they wanted. So those are just some issues that have been of concern to me.
So again, one of the big challenges, we've done a lot of Medicaid expansion over the years. We've asked cutting the waivers and we've expanded, but we've always had what I think is referred to as a donut hole. It's the adults without kids that have not been covered. Under Senator Christensen's bill, they'll be covered up to 100%, and they'll be able to, the exchange, the federal government will take the rest of it. So that donut hole gets filled with this bill. Does that make sense? That's a big, on April 1.
Yeah.
You call it the gap, I don't know what you call it now. I'm a few years old, I suppose, in the terminology.
Donut hole, I think another proposition.
Yeah,
So-
that's the gap, okay?
Can you talk about Senator Anderegg's bill, why that wasn't allowed to be heard in committee yesterday?
I think there are people who would like it heard. I think you could tell from the vote on the floor that I think there's support for Senator Christensen's bill. I think there are some that would like full repeal, not only of just full repeal of the initiative, but also Representative Spenlow's bill. I think there's a sentiment out there that, again, that's an option, but obviously for our body, it's not. We are not repealing, and that's not one of the things we're looking at right now.
But why not? Why not give that a hearing and if it gets out of committee, a vote on the floor? Would that have taken too many votes away from Senator Christensen's bill? I know you counted heads in caucus.
I'm not, you'll have to ask Senator Anderegg. I'm not sure there were votes in the committee to pass it out. Okay?
I'm not sure Senator Anderegg would have voted for it.
Yeah,
But again, why not hear it and find out?
because just like bills or substitutes that don't get enough votes, we don't hear them. If you got the votes, we'll hear it.
But I mean, you don't know if you had the votes in committee or not because it was never heard, so why not hear it?
Well, typically, when you move on, it means you don't have the votes. Isn't that how it works? It's a nice way of doing it.
But it wasn't his choice to move on, it was,
I think Senator Buxton made the motion, the committee supported it.
I know Senator Anderegg has expressed frustration that it hasn't been heard.
If he'd had the
That's why I'm
votes,
asking.
if he'd had the votes, we'd have heard it.
And we just expanded one of the benefits today in here. We gave dental to seniors under Medicaid,
That was appreciated.
which I've only worked on for 14 years. Still got some more people to go.
Okay, we take off. Any further comment, other subjects then?
Are there others?
So thank you for being here, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia.